If you could, I guess, identify a few different major things that the Black community could work on in terms of strengthening our relationships, what would you say?
I would say, how can I word this? We need to. I'll say all three of them first. I'll just throw them out there. Um, Queer erasure. We need to work on that. Um, Dismantling the strong Black woman stereotype. We need to work on that. Um, and supporting the vulnerability of Black men. I wouldn't even say supporting that, like safeguarding that, really safeguarding that, or even a better way to say it, holding space for Black men. Queer erasure in the Black community is, and even within the diaspora, because this is like, Blackness is global for me, and within the diaspora, I really feel like we perform our sexuality for white approval. And is very heartbreaking to me now at this point, because we're seeing, all these different movements and rallying for just really Black existence at this point, like just to exist, just to go out and maybe buy groceries or like hold hands, like just the bare minimum basic elements of our existence. And it's frustrating to me, because the minute that a Black queer body shows up and is willing to do the work or is willing to rally, it's like we become so threatened, and we become our oppressors. Like in trauma psychology, like one of the trauma, responses or possible outcomes is that you become the person who hurt you. You take on their ideals and their persona, because it's like it's so entrenched in your psyche. And I'm seeing that with Black people, and it's frustrating to me, because I'm like, we love James Baldwin.
Yep.
He's queer. We love, Nikki Giovanni, she's queer. We love Toni Morrison, she's queer. Like, Bayard Rustin, who helped Dr. King really be and elevate to this seat of like notoriety, was a queer man.
Yep.
It was so bad with Bayard Rustin. They were like, look, y'all two have to separate, because they're gonna move from saying, Dr. King, you're cheating on your wife with other women, to Dr. King, you're gay, you're homosexual. And they were like, if that accusation comes out, the whole movement will crumble. And I was like I, on an intellectual level, on a cerebral level, I got it, but like on a human level, my heart broke. And I was just kind of like, why did we allow this to happen? Like, why do we keep allowing this rhetoric to be perpetuated? Because when you look in African culture and African history, separate from European context, separate from European rhetoric and ideology and interaction, homosexuality and queerness and trans existed, and it was revered. There was no problem with it. And there was many different facets and ways in which it showed up in ancient culture, in which these individuals were very sacred and protectors of spirituality, of education, of the arts, and things. Like, it wasn't an issue. There was no issue of, perversion or anything like that, because that's always like this common myth that we hear. It's like, oh well, LGBTQ, like they're hurting children and they're perverting our youth. And it's like, where is this thought process? Where's the entry point for this thought process? Like, really consider the source of this idea, of this fear, of this idea and this rhetoric. It's coming from white supremacy. Coming from white supremacy. It's a divide and conquer tactic. That's all. It's a divide and conquer tactic. That's all it is. This is the same thing that happened to King. They divided King from Bayard Rustin on the basis of homosexuality. You know, since it's April, it's still Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and as a survivor, you know, one of the journeys, one of the experiences as a survivor, when you experience assault, sometimes your sexuality, it changes. Your sexual expression, it goes through a journey of recovery along with you. And then also, you know, sexuality is a spectrum. It's a spectrum. You know, there's so many different things that can occur for a straight person, for someone who's queer, for someone who's trans, for someone who's pansexual, for someone who's bisexual. Like, there's many different ways in which that can look depending upon the person, their intersections, and their own dating experiences. Yeah. So it's like we're trying to take this vast experience of African identity, including African expressions of sexuality, and put it into this very minuscule gaze of white supremacy, and making it fit for the whole community, the entire. And it's like, no wonder our statistics for, you know, Black LGBTQ plus community and Latinx plus is like, no wonder the statistics of just depression, mental health, like homelessness, job scarcity. No wonder the numbers look the way they do, because it's like the experience is so vast and we're trying to make it like this. It's like it don't work. It's the same thing as like as a Black, you know, the strong Black woman. It's like, do you understand that in our indigenous, in the continent of Africa, a Kebalan, like, Black women show up in so many different ways. Sometimes our strength is to make sure that the children are okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes our strength is like to not bear children at all, because that's like, we need a certain group of women to show up a certain type of way. And if they have children, it throws off the dynamic of the entire community.
That is so interesting.
Like, is some of these rituals and the way that the way that they're done, like even the Dahomey women, right? And these are the Amazon warriors and things like that. Imagine if we said to women who protect and who fight on the front lines and organize strategy, I need you to be barefoot and pregnant. Like, I need you to have your hair done and safeguard your man and make sure his food is cooked and have a plate for him ready when he comes home and it's like, who's gonna sharpen my war? My tools for warfare. Like, who's gonna make sure that the steel is ready? Who's gonna make sure that, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the femininity shows up in different ways. That this ideal of strength, and even in the American context, like, this idea of a strong Black woman is really just, Black woman, shut up and be quiet. It's recreating, what white men, how they want to experience a Black woman. We want you to be pretty, we want you to be quiet, and we want you to just serve me. Right? Even with the and I've experienced this, like, as a teacher, like, even during COVID, your tone, like, what were you thinking and what were you trying to communicate, and all in the midst of, like, George Floyd and the riots and stuff. And I'm like, and I'm like, in my part, like, breaking down crying, and I'm like, do they recognize that they're tone policing me? I'm like, do they understand that, like I'm grieving a community loss and also getting, like, police tone, like, what is happening right now? And that's the thing. No, they don't realize it. They do not realize it, because they don't participate in our culture. They don't understand how much we need to really embrace, like, Black men being vulnerable and being open and sacred space for them. Like, one of the ways I began to process and understand my assault, my sexual attack against my body was by talking to men, was by talking to men and being like, yo, like, what is this? Like, some dude texts me and like, I don't really know what to say because it's pissing me off. And like, and you know, the trusted men around me, my trusted brothers, they'd be like, what's going on? What happened? What's going on? And sometimes it would be queer men and sometimes it would be straight men. And a lot of times, like when I would try, I would have to do a lot of, you know, just trauma Olympics of being like, and advocating and being like, that's not a joke with cis het men, like cis straight men. Like I'd be like, that's not a joke. Like I know that we laugh about these things in social media. I was like, but you know, because I've had certain experiences, like, and because I want to have an exchange with this person in a certain way, like that's only increasing the violence. Like for me and for women like me. And then they would kind of be like, oh, oh my God, wow, that's horrible. And I'd be like, yeah, what do I do? like what, like help me. Cause I really like this guy, like, and I want him to like me, but like something he said was like really problematic. And I don't really, and then I started to realize it was just like a lot of times men, black men, whether queer or straight, like 9 times out of 10, they couldn't really offer me that help because they were either perpetuating it or they were also experiencing it. And it was like they were stuck. It was almost like we were all frozen in time together. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, why are we not talking about this? Like, why are we not coming together and talking about this and really like holding space for each other? And like, and there were moments where like I would cry trying to have this conversation. And then like other black men, like they would cry and we would just like kind of hold each other and cry and just be like, oh crap. And I would oftentimes never get my solution, but like we would just hold space for each other. And I'd be like, wow, why is this not happening on a larger scale? Like in the community, because it's like, it's insane how much this happens when you really start to open up like on it. Because in group conversations is a little different, but like if you have like a one-to-one person conversation or maybe like 3 people together, you start to like really see that like the ha ha ha's are really like like it's a boo hoo hoo, because it's like we don't, that's a big thing we say, if you don't laugh you cry, if you don't, yeah, if you don't laugh you cry, like if it doesn't kill you it makes you stronger. So we just figure we're like, oh well, you know, I'll laugh about it.
You know, I think, well, I'm really grateful and I'm glad that we're having this conversation as well, because we don't really sit around and listen to people often. And there are many things that I do not know, that I do not understand. And there are some things about me that other people don't know or understand. But if you're making a quick judgment based off of what you perceive or a few words a person may hear, you'll likely never even fathom their story or what they have to share. And I'm glad you brought up the queer eraser point. And as the Black community, I don't even think people understand during the Stonewall uprisings that the Black Panthers supported the LGBTQ community in that way. They would have never thought, oh no, Black Panthers, no, they not. No, they supported that because they understood what was important. They didn't care what these people did with their bodies in the bedroom. That's none of your business, right? They cared about what was important. Can these people get justice? Can I just freely express who I am as a person? And if you're denying humanity, of course you're gonna have a problem with that. And people got a problem that you got a problem with that. And it's like, I'm a human being. This is what we do. Y'all out here having fun. Let us go out here and have fun. You know, that's what they wanted to do. And they were being denied that right. So they put in work. And they got support from the Black Panther. Come on now. You can't deny that. That's because they had a certain mind, a certain consciousness on this is what's important. We all fighting. So why would I separate that because we got this difference and something that ain't got nothing to do with me? You know, it ain't like you against Black people. You know, we came together on a common issue.
Exactly. And that's the part that I really want us to stop and really hear, because even with Stonewall, you know, and even how that turned into, you know, the New York City Pride Parade, like Stonewall was started by a Puerto Rican trans woman and a Black trans woman. Because now when we look at Pride, we see so many, you know, non-Black queer people showing up and really dominating it. And there's no inclusivity of Black, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, queer culture, contributions. Is just even the queer community now is experiencing like this whitewash, this erasure of Blackness, this erasure of Indigenous identity. And even that for me is I'm just like, I'm tired. I'm so tired. I'm so tired because it's like, if it's not, it's almost like if it's not one thing, it's another.
Yep.
Now one thing is another. It's like Blackness is global, is limitless, it's inclusive, like it's vast, it's beautiful. It needs to be respected. It needs to be protected. Like we really, in all capacities, because this divide and conquer framework is so dangerous. It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. And it's like, yo, we have so much more strength in numbers. We have so much more strength in numbers if we stop focusing on, you know, the thing, like what we do in our bedroom, fam.
They tried to bring Dr. King down tomorrow. Oh, he had enough. You gonna ignore his whole message because he not doing what you want him to do? Come on.
I was like, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're missing the point. Like having an human experience, right? Like going back to the chart and the natal chart, human experience. We all cheat. Sometimes it's with another person. Sometimes it's on our taxes. Sometimes it's on our diet. Sometimes it's with clothes. Like, you know, you shouldn't be wearing that clothes, that size. Like, you know, you have a specific insecurity. Like, you know, you're trying to work on something and be better. Like, don't get that right now. We all cheat. We all fall short of the glory of God. Like, that doesn't mean that my attempt to do better and to elevate myself and the community around me is horrible. Like it's for nothing. It's for naught. Like